How's it going, everyone? Wayne the Unknown here, and welcome to another episode of Cosplay Con Talk, where we basically discuss everything pertaining to the cosplay community and conventions. Tonight, we are doing a second panel called Autism and Cosplay. I'm joined here by AJ McConnell, aka Solstice Cosplay, Bob Greenwade, who is also known as the One-Eyed Cosplayer, if I'm not mistaken. That's what you said your handle is going to be, right?
One Eye Cosplay.
Okay. And also, I'm joined by Iro Senpai. How are we all doing tonight?
Hello.
Doing all right. How are you, Wayne?
Oh,
I'm good.
Above average.
I'm doing well. Again, thank you all for coming. We are going to be talking about basically what to be aware of when it comes to autism and the cosplaying community. And first off, I'll be starting with Solstice. From someone who, does have autism, what are some of the challenges, that come with, having autism and going to conventions and cosplaying?
Mm,
Well, uh, oh no, I got put on the spot and then I panicked.
It's
Um,
okay. Take your time. This is to be like an hour long podcast at least,
yeah,
just to cover all the bases.
yeah. So
think I lost you.
I I was diagnosed pretty late in life. I was about 27, um, and so I've gone a lot of my life without actually knowing why I seem to have such trouble with certain things and such ease with other things. Um, so it's new. I'm still figuring it out. Um, but in general, uh, things I have to be aware of are uh, well, social norms are really big because it's so many people all in the same place, and pretty much all of us are weird in our own way. And so the social norms are a bit skewed from what I usually deal with in just regular everyday life. And so adjusting to the new expectations and doing that on the fly, because you go for a long time without going to a con and you know the basic rules, but there are always intricacies within those rules, and I don't necessarily pick those up the way other people do. And so that's something that I really try and be aware of, so that I behave properly and make sure that other people are comfortable with me being at the con. Another thing that I need to be aware of is something like noise, and then an uncomfortable cosplay will take a lot out of me, um, and it'll end in like a migraine at the end of the day or total overload if I'm not careful.
I think
So
that's one thing, you definitely, got to be careful with, especially when you're in big crowds and at a con.
yeah.
Same question for Bob here. Like, what are some of the things that when and how long have you been diagnosed with autism? Like, when did you find out?
Well, I kind of found out. Well, first came to my attention watching Terminator: The Sarah Connor when it was postulated by somebody who did not know that Summer Glau's character was actually a robot, that she may have had Asperger's syndrome, and then I saw it um, mentioned a little bit later on another show, and I started to wonder, and so I looked up the basics on it and thought that does kind of describe me, kind of close, and uh, had a psychiatrist query me, and he wouldn't really specialize in autism disorders, but he pretty much agreed that I did, meet the criteria. So um, I started educating myself as much as I could on it, and this is like um, I think it was like the mid to late noughts. Don't remember exactly when, but and of course that since then Asperger's has become not a thing according to the American Psychiatric Association. It's all rolled together into autism spectrum disorder. Um, what I what I have tended to have the worst problem with is my sensory issues and difficulty with um, social interactions. Um, and you can tell because of my hesitation, my speech, that I'm getting a little uncomfortable talking this way, out broadcasting it out. But I do want everybody to understand. Yeah, I'm on the autistic spectrum, and there are certain things you watch out with me. I'm going to fumble every so often in social interactions. I can be I can be tooling along just fine, and then all of a sudden um, take a right turn into the ocean.
Now,
Uh,
what kind of effect has it had when it's come to cosplaying?
Um, Not a whole lot so far, but then I've only been to two cons so far: Rose City Comic Con in 2013 and 2019. I've kind of and I kind of tend to keep to myself a little bit anyway. And I may get into a conversation with one or two people at a time, a brief conversation, and not I have to be careful to not get into anything too deep. That's something that um, I have the advantage of being an older person on the spectrum. Is that I managed to learn how to adjust myself to my neurotypical friends and peers. Um, One thing I'm being aware of is not so much my noise sensitivities, which in terms of a cosplay convention or type of situation, that'll mostly be like any kind of sirens or alarms and so forth. Um, the other noises going on I'm okay with, but I also tend to be overly sensitive to cold and not sensitive enough to heat. So if I'm bundled up too much in the warm weather, I will tend to dehydrate. Um, but if I'm not bundled up enough in the cold, I will be miserable and cranky.
Oh, don't want
So
that.
I'm hoping like to go to start going to Wizard World, which in Portland is in January.
Ooh, that's a really big con.
Yeah, but I will not be cosplaying anything like my Dr. Midnight costume, which involves a lot of spandex.
Ooh.
No bare skin outside in January for me.
Oh, man, that's definitely well developed. Same
And
question. Oh, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, and yeah, I kind of have to be sure that things fit comfortably and so forth. And I've kind of had a little bit of bladder problems all my life, and being a man over 50 hasn't helped.
Oh, I'm
So I
glad
had to
that
be sure
hasn't.
that anything I wear is going to be easy to get out of in the restroom, and
Oh
that's
yeah,
something
no,
that I think
always.
I,
I go ahead. Sorry.
it's something you have to be aware of as a man over 50 and in general. But a lot of us on the spectrum don't quite feel those parts properly. So
Oh yeah, no. I think before I get to Eris here, I think anyone who wears any kind of cosplay, like make sure that it's easy to get out of if you have to go to the bathroom or something. I
yeah,
think we
that
can
is
all agree here on that.
yeah.
Mm.
Those are the two big tips, really. Are make sure you can use the restroom and make sure it's weather appropriate.
All that
But
too.
weather appropriate is even more important for us on the spectrum who might perceive temperature differently than our
Oh,
neurotypical
definitely,
peers.
definitely. Same question for you, Eros. What are some of the challenges and stuff you have faced while cosplaying and everything?
For me, I wasn't also diagnosed until my 20s, my later 20s, but I had so many people supporting me in the meantime, so I was raised more neurotypical. So I could pick up on the, though, yeah, I used to get phone calls from my elementary school to my mom almost daily. Then by the time I hit high school, it kind of mellowed out into, oh, I'll try to branch out. I'll try to be sociable. and now I do cosplay for the past almost decade, and there's still some days that I feel really uncomfortable making costumes because I'm like, am I good enough? Am I good enough? This doesn't feel right. No. And it's just more of a mental thing. But yeah, living when you're living with autism and not knowing it, and your parents, I swear my parents should have known being obsessed with Godzilla and everything else and collecting toys like Pikachu for years and years at like how old? Seriously, I saw the Godzilla movies at 7 and I couldn't stop. I love them to death.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, you've done you have books on this kind of stuff too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I actually, one of my quirks I have, I like to call it quirk, is I like to research things. So I like researching horror movies, or I like researching psychology, and I've actually been to a conference about like social learning. It's an actual program, and my current job is working in a college, so I determined, okay, if I can afford it, I'm going to get into fashion design and psychology because that goes hand in hand. Plus, I already own way too many psychology books not to use them.
Nice. So imagine that also helps as well for those who are curious and everything. Back to AJ. When it comes to cosplaying in general, like what are your comfort cosplays when it comes, when being on the spectrum and everything? What kind of cosplays do you prefer doing?
Gosh, at this point, I don't really feel like I have any comfort cosplays. Like they're all uncomfortable to some degree, especially since I'm usually carrying a backpack around con. I'll forget to drink water as well. I'll run out of energy and need to eat immediately because I couldn't feel that I was hungry for like 3 hours. Um, so it's something that I know is going to happen. So I try and make them as comfortable as possible. I think probably one of my most comfortable cosplays is Oscar Pine from Ruby, because it's mostly just regular clothes. Well, they're sort of ratty clothes, but the only uncomfortable bit about it is the wig, and then also I'm wearing leather gloves most of the time, so I have to take those off if I need to use my phone or something. So that one's pretty comfortable overall. But yeah, I'm I'm really honestly never comfortable in cosplay.
Yeah.
I just have to try and mitigate it.
Do the best you can and make the best of the situation while at con and everything.
Yep.
Same question for you, Bob. What is your comfort cosplay? Because I know, like AJ said, there really isn't one, but I'm sure you have one.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the opposite end where nothing I have is really especially uncomfortable. But of course, if I have something where our garment is comfortable, I'll find a, a substitute that is more comfortable. Um, let's see, I have my that MIB cosplay that you were using as my thumbnail for this, and it's the exact same suit that I wear as the Shadow. And that one is pretty nice. It's a very very old suit, um, and I've tried on the Harpo Marks. I have a hard time finding any hats that will fit. Um, is my big thing, and I am looking at the costumes that I have in here, including a couple that I still underway, and I don't really see anything there that is uncomfortable. I am not looking forward to some of the heavier and more unbalanced ones that I have in my queue. So I may not go to those, but I really am looking forward to wanting to do Honda Onaka, for example. And I have yet to see how that's going to go. And Didn't I say earlier that he had the cat? If you have a cat, it's gotta be-
Yeah.
before we went on, I said if there's a cat or a dog or a small child within 25 feet of a microphone, there will be a problem.
She's supposed to be behind 2 closed doors.
Someone let her out?
She's. I remember during our the very first episode, she was just going off
Oh my gosh.
like a fire hydrant.
Everywhere.
Oh, yeah, there is that cat. Yeah, I don't. It's pretty well. Yeah, I'm pretty good in that area. It helps a lot though if I'm able to accommodate my my injured eye. But we can talk about that. That doesn't have to do with autism. We can talk
Oh
about
yeah,
that
for the
under
next,
disabilities.
what looking forward to.
Yeah.
Same question. For Eros, you know, with being on the spectrum and everything. What are your comfort cosplays?
Surprisingly, my most comfortable cosplays have to be like bodysuits, just because I could move around more. So I have cosplayed Gwenpool, and it was really, really fun because I got to wear a bodysuit. I got to have like props with me, and it was really comfy. Like people thought I was uncomfortable being in a bodysuit. I'm like, no, like this costume and Non, they're amazing. They don't feel that heavy, and they're great for the weather. Now, if I have to wear Mimikyu again, I can't wear it in a location full of people sometimes because it's so hot underneath. I wear 2 petticoats with it.
Oh my.
So I'm literally a spooky cupcake, according to my friend. So I'm a cupcake. Yeah, the spooky cupcake is so warm that's gonna hurt you because I can't do that. Bodysuit, it's weird. Like the more skin tight something is in cosplay, I'm fine. But if it's not, sometimes it feels like I'm gonna roast in this thing, because the lighting and I don't have my glasses on. That's a problem. My business craft, but I still for 2 to 3 days will not wear glasses because of costuming. Then I learned the hard way that ruined description.
Oof. Back to
That brings up a comment that I have, if I could.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
So I have a cosplay, my Diana cosplay from Sailor Moon, and I made a corset for it. It's a custom corset, and eventually it kind of overloaded my senses. But for a good portion of the day, that one actually felt like just a constant hug. So it was actually surprisingly comfortable in that respect, even though I was actually wearing 3 petticoats and hugely overheating.
Oof.
You had 3? That's nuts.
You should see her skirt. It's standing straight out.
I remember,
yes.
if I remember during the podcast, that's actually one of the photos that's being shown.
Yep.
That just, I mean, it looked comfortable, but I never would have guessed that there was 3 petticoats underneath that thing.
Well, yeah, I don't have many photos of the full body one, but that brings up a really interesting thing that I'm learning about with autism, in that I respond really well to deep pressure, so really tight hugs and that kind of squeeze that pops your back, and I mean, like if someone's sitting on my lap, that sort of thing, it calms me a lot. And so that corset, even though the rest of the cosplay is not comfortable, that corset is actually really comforting to me.
Nice.
Until it becomes too much.
And that brings my next question, starting, I know with people with autism, they have that one or a few things that actually calms them down when, for me, when I feel like so much is going on, like just a whole lot's going on, I can't process it, or loud noises or something. For me, it's listening to music or just gaming or something, which helps calms me down. I had an experience once when I was working at Burger King. My boss decides to put me in the front drive-thru, and mind you, I've never worked front drive-thru before. We were busy with customers, in the drive-thru, and then hearing the stuff in the background. I basically went into full panic mode, and I just could not handle it. So the best thing I could do is just go into a quiet area and just, you know, try to calm myself down.
That's what you do.
Yep. I
Um,
mean, I try and take off, like if I have a backpack or a purse or a jacket that I can remove without, being indecent. That's usually a good first step. If I can put earplugs in, I usually forget earplugs, but if I can, then it's a good coping mechanism. Um, if I can shut out other people, and if I can forget that I am in cosplay for the appearance and just sort of let myself relax, because I'm almost never relaxed in cosplay. I'm tense all the time because I'm trying to look like this character, and this character never relaxes because they're not real. Um, and so that's something that I'm constantly aware of. So if I can forget about that for a little bit and just be okay with not presenting myself to people, um, and shut out noise. And I'm not so much bothered by visual input, but sometimes it can be a little overwhelming at cons because there's so many colors and things going on. And then if I can forget about masking, which for listeners that aren't familiar, masking is the act of pretending to be neurotypical. And for different people, it takes different levels of energy and for it on different days. Um, but it always takes some energy. And now that I actually know that it's a thing that I do by default, having not known that I was autistic for most of my life, uh, now I know that I can actually turn it off.
I think most people don't realize that they're autistic. I mean, for a long time until they're older, like, you know, you could have it your whole life, not even know it until you get older. And when you see it, like, you learn about it, it's like, oh, that makes sense, kind of thing.
Mhm.
A lot of us who are at the in the mild to moderate range can be like that. And, I tend to be a little bit closer to the moderate, at the low end of moderate.
Yeah. Personally, I don't like functioning labels because, I mean, some days I am nonverbal and completely not functional, and some days you would never even know if you weren't looking for it. But yeah.
Yeah, I've never been to a point where I was completely nonverbal, and there have been a few people who have regretted that. But
I feel like everyone has their own way. Some people will, some
that
people,
is
some people will
that
like
is one of
shut
the things
themselves
that
out.
yeah,
Yeah.
or start throwing small objects in my general direction. But that is one thing that does kind of help calm me when I'm starting to get overload. Is just um, finding the humor in something. Just being able to just cut loose and do Mark's cosplay. You run around and kind of pester people in character a little bit, especially if they're dressed as somebody like Deadpool, and they can be expecting it.
Now, for my next
Or
question. Oh, sorry.
there was one fellow who was at 2019 who was dressed as Batman, and that would have been an interesting interaction because he had a good sense, he seemed to have a real good sense of humor. The other things, if I could find the more serious things, if I could find a place to go where it is just quiet and still, um, and just kind of sit there for 15 to 20 minutes or so, that really kind of helps me center and get ready for the rest of the day. I tend to do that when I'm in an on-stage production. I make sure the director and my castmates know I need to go off just before we go on for about for a period of time. And the Majestic here in Corvallis has stairway on at the stage right that doesn't connect to anything else, and I can just go over there and not be bothered, and people know I'm there.
Well,
And
that's a good thing.
and that is good. So I'm for future cons, I'm getting a hotel or motel rather, as close to the venue as I can, so I only have a couple blocks to walk if I need to go decompress for a bit, and that's kind of my if all else fails thing. One thing I've discovered really helps a lot if I'm getting overwhelmed by the crowd is to get into an interesting conversation with just one or two people, and
Basically, keep yourself distracted.
yeah, in case it kind of gets me distracted and kind of focused on one thing, and I can kind of forget about everything going on. I could, if I'm being interesting enough, which is not guaranteed, um, I will then we can keep the conversation going for half an hour, and I'll be great.
Same question for Eros. What is that one thing when, it just things get really stressful and overwhelmed for you at a con? What is the one thing you do to decompress?
I decompress by going to like the manga room if it's like a convention, or I go to like outside. If it's outside the convention center, I go to an area where there's really nobody. Not even like the photographers go down there. I just walk around. I walk a full lap and come back in, and it's a lot easier for me to do that now. But before, I was too embarrassed to. I admit I kid because no one knew I had it, and according to scientific studies, girls are not diagnosed as much. So
Really?
yes, males are usually diagnosed before girls because girls, as they grow up, they are attention hungry and all that fun stuff they like to write in books, which is total bull crap, But women get diagnosed in their 20s on average, I've discovered, since the APA, the American Psychology Association, has been working. So we're not alone in this world. We just don't get diagnosed until we're on our 20s or told we have ADHD and like tons of medication,
Oh, that's crazy. Now, AJ brought up a good thing. And I'm not really familiar with, what does neurotypical mean?
Neurotypical, according to books, means a person who is neurologically generally okay. So think about it this way. If you're neurotypical, you don't feel the same side effects of panic attacks as someone who's autistic. So a neurotypical panic attack could be anger and all that stuff, but they are like, okay, calm down as normal. But if you're autistic or you have a schizoid disorder or something, that's what the book says, your body takes longer to process it. Your heart will faster. Your head will hurt more. It's literally ingrained into you to hurt more.
Oof.
It's not fun.
I imagine. I'm gonna be going down the line here with the next question. Start with AJ. For those who aren't familiar with, people who are, autistic and everything, what's some advice that you can give to people who aren't familiar with this kind of stuff?
Well, I think one of the first things, and perhaps one of the hardest things for a lot of people to grasp, even a lot of autistic people, is that having trouble in one area does not mean that you have trouble in another. If if I am in a place where I can't speak, it's called selective mutism. Basically, where there's no physical reason why I can't speak. It's in my head, but that doesn't mean that I'm choosing to be mute. I'm still there. I'm still listening to what you're saying. Maybe I can't put words together in a way that I can communicate something to you, but I haven't. I'm not dead to the world, and some people who are autistic, they can't speak in general. They just can't, and some people, there are all sorts of strengths and weaknesses that autistic people have, and it's individual to each person. And just because they're not acting the way you might expect them to act does not mean that they're deficient in some way, like a social way, or that they can't communicate with you. And it can be difficult if you don't know what to expect. But it's really imperative to keep in mind that first and foremost, you're interacting with a person, and you probably do not know 95% of what's going on with that person, even if you're acquainted with them. So there are people at cons like me who typically you'll never even see it if I'm masking. And there are people at cons who are pretty easy to spot as autistic, and we're all autistic. We just react differently to the world, and we have different strengths and different weaknesses, and we're all deserving of the same respect.
Oh, most definitely. Um, Same question for Bob. What is some advice you would like to give people out there who are not familiar with autism and everything? Like, what would you tell them to let them know? Hey, this is what I have and everything. This is what you should know.
So the big thing I think to keep in mind is that when we do make some kind of social error, even if it's a big one, it's not because we don't care. It's because we just don't perceive or don't understand. And here I am in my late 50s, and there are a lot of things that I'm only now figuring out that teenagers take for granted. Um, we also very often don't have the same kind of emotional filters that our neurotypical friends take for granted. You're able to kind of set aside um, certain feelings more easily or less easily, even. So, yeah, what appears to be an overreaction may just be what is going on with us emotionally. And the other thing, and one thing which I don't think is often a mistake, not often made, but people should be aware of, is that we're not the same. Um, One autistic person is very different from any other. We'll have different places in the spectrum. It's not just a one dimensional. This is severe and this is simple. It can be more or less severe in different areas. The joke I've read is that we're more different from each other than we are from neurotypicals, um, and that's quite the thing. Neurotypical simply is just being typical neurologically. The essence is anybody who's not on the autistic spectrum. So you can understand how all your neurotypical friends will respond, but here we are. We're like 1% of the population, very small, and we if we're at the convention, is because we want to be there. We want to be involved, and um, we are going to make mistakes. So just help us through it.
Right. Same question for Eros. What I asked Bob and AJ. What's some advice you'd like to give to people who aren't familiar with autism and everything?
I would say, for my advice, just to be patient with us. Yeah, sometimes it will take a couple of minutes for us to understand something, but in a high stretch situation like artist alley or vendor halls or anything like a basic convention, yeah, we can adapt to that. But sometimes it's very difficult to adapt when everything's gone cuckoo crazy, like lately, compared to when we had conventions like almost every day or every month. It's it's a process to help teach us stuff. I understand, and the people that are diagnosed when they're older, it's a little harder too, because some people will say, "Oh, you have ADHD. It won't hurt you to do this," and it's like, it will hurt me to do this because I'm autistic, and just because your brain doesn't fire off neurons that say I'm messed up doesn't mean mine aren't gonna.
I know, and I know another thing is also not really being able to understand social cues as well.
Oh my gosh,
Exactly.
can I say something about that?
Yes, you may.
I freeze. I freeze so hard, especially at cons. And if someone like people start all doing the same thing, and I don't know how they do it. And so I just stand there and watch for a while, and I don't do anything until I understand what's going on. It takes me a very long time.
Yeah. Now, this question right here, this could be a double-edged sword question. What are your thoughts on people who don't have autism cosplay as characters with autism?
Mm-hmm.
I want to say good luck finding them. I have a hard time even finding fictional characters who are on the spectrum who are distinctive enough to be cosplayed.
I know there's Newt Scamander from Fantastic Beasts. From what I was told, that character has autism.
Yeah, I was just calling up a list of fictional autistic characters. I am not seeing him listed on this on the Wikipedia page. So um, somebody probably should update that. Don't the one the two I only see two really distinctive characters um, that I've been able to pick out. One is Billy Cranston, the Blue Ranger from the Power Rangers movie in 2017, which was beautifully portrayed by R.J. Seiler. And then the other one is from a TV show. I have to scroll a little bit to find it again. A TV show that I haven't yet seen, but I'm interested in. The show is called Origin. It's on YouTube Premium. The character is Agnes Labachi, and she does appear to be kind of distinctive. And I am not finding a whole lot of others. I imagine somebody could go in cosplaying Julia from Sesame Street, but just the lack of characters um, in fiction who are autistic is one thing that I wanted to bring up a little later on.
Oh, I know there's some protagonists in anime that are, but man, history of we don't talk about men comes in handy. Yeah, some other Gundam protagonists are autistic.
I feel like that's something that could be discussed later down the road for a future podcast. Is fictional characters who do have autism. I think that would make for an interesting podcast in general.
Yeah, the only other I think we could possibly include um, Dr. Sean Murphy from The Good Doctor, and
Definitely.
he would be distinctive enough. That is another really brilliant um, portrayal. Freddie Highmore, big shout out.
He is so good at what he does.
And I had one other in here. Who was it? There have been other really good portrayals that. Let's see. I think. Oh, there's a character in She-Ra in the rebooted She-Ra.
Are you talking about Entrapta?
Yes.
Some people do have problems with her as a character, but when I watched that, I did totally pick her out as autistic.
The producers have specifically stated that she is, and I'm that's gotten me. That's yet another reason for me to check out the show. And then of course there's Dr. Spencer Reed from Criminal Minds.
Yes.
As portrayed by Matthew Gray Gubler, and he's been frequently on the show, speculated as being on the spectrum, although never confirmed.
No, and most people. Sorry.
Sorry. I think that's really, really common is that, I mean, I've seen threads in autistic discussion groups about who do you headcanon as autistic. And without fail, those threads are usually hundreds of comments long
Oh wow.
because there's there are so many characters who show signs or that are portrayed in a way that is so relatable uh, to the autistic community, but it's very rare um, to see a gosh, any term I use here is going to be loaded, but an accurate portrayal of an autistic person in media when an autistic person wasn't involved directly in the creation of that character.
Yeah,
Uh,
like to use the term an honest
okay,
portrayal,
yeah, that
which
works.
is what I was speaking of. Which is what I was speaking of for like Freddie Highmore and R.J. Seiler, and while we're at it, Ben Affleck and The Accountant.
Okay, I haven't seen that one yet, but yeah, so an honest portrayal. And so, I mean, some of the characters that I cosplay, I headcanon as autistic because I see all of these things in their character that I see in myself so much. Uh, but as far as an holistic or neurotypical person cosplaying an autistic character deliberately, I think it would have to depend on the character and on the portrayal. For example, um, going as something something really well known like Rain Man or the character from What's Eating Gilbert Grape, that's probably not going to be a good choice.
No.
Because in order to portray that character, you would have to take on
The persona.
characteristics that really don't belong to you
And I've seen
as a neurotypical person.
and
Yeah.
I've seen both movies. Like props to Dustin Hoffman, and props to Leonardo
Leonardo
DiCaprio. For
DiCaprio.
I mean, the thing is, interesting fact: people literally thought that there was something wrong with Leonardo DiCaprio when that movie came out. Like they thought he was actually like that. He portrayed the character really well too.
And see, I haven't seen that movie. I just you see stills that circulate around and then it just
I highly
meant
recommend it. It's really good.
That's one thing.
yeah.
That's one movie that's on my list of I got to check out for these purposes at least.
Definitely do your research for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if a neurotypical person tried to portray that character from What's Eating Gilbert Grape, um, then that's those are mannerisms that shouldn't be taken on artificially, in my
No,
opinion.
no,
And there are plenty of other characters that you can portray that will not have those same issues where you're taking on stuff that's not yours.
definitely. We got about a couple minutes here. I guess the one way to end this podcast, starting with AJ, what is someone for those who who are on the spectrum with autism and everything and are considering wanting to go to conventions and cosplay? What's some advice, good advice that you can give?
There are a couple things. Make sure you have access to water and snacks. Um, if you can, if you think it'll be helpful for you, bring a buddy who knows what they're doing at the con. Um, and then try and scope out places to sit. They can be few and far between at cons, but
Oof, definitely.
sitting is so helpful for me because I can just it's just you can't relax like that when you're standing up. Um, Another thing is try and understand as much as possible what you're getting into. Not everyone, but a lot of autistic people have trouble in new situations, situations that are constantly changing or that can't be predicted. So the more you know about what to expect, the easier time you'll likely have at con. And then also bring earplugs, or they've got newer ones that are supposed to decrease but not block sound. Those can be really helpful, just so that you can make a space for yourself if you need it. And if you're going with a buddy, ask them to check in on you, because it's really easy to ignore my needs when I'm at a con. I can get really thirsty, I can get really hungry, I can get really sore, I can have a headache and not even know it. And just having that physical check-in and that mental check-in can be really helpful to deal with problems before they become big issues.
Most I can't I can't argue with that. That's that's some really good advice for those who are, with autism thinking about going to their first con. I really agree on the buddy system thing. Always have someone with you, because if you go by a con to yourself, there's that chance that you could have a panic attack, and there are some people around a con that wouldn't know what to do. So having a friend who's aware is always a good thing. Um, Same question for Bob. What kind of advice would you like to give for those who are, you know, who are wanting to consider going to their first con and everything with autism?
I generally will first up echo the bring along, go with a friend. Um, both the times that I went to Rose City, I went by myself, but then I'm not that subject to panic attacks and other things where I have to have somebody helping me out. Um, excuse me. Um, and remember to mind your self care. Research it ahead of time so you can kind of know what to expect, and that's a big rule for any new experience. Have an idea of what's going on, so you know what you're getting yourself into. And then also be aware of and if you're going to cosplay, try and fit those accommodations into your cosplay. Let your first cosplay costume be something that is physically comfortable to you. Um, if you have um, if you have light issues, include sunglasses. If you have sound issues, include ear coverings or whatever will protect that. Um, that that's in general, like that MIB cosplay you have. You see those shades.
Mm-hmm.
Those I have a light sensitivity, and so that would kind of mitigates that. If the lights are low, I'll take them off. See, well, I'm okay. Can I see okay with them? Am I having a problem without them? I ended up keeping them on all the time, except when I was um, in the big hall with the lit stage. Um, and if you're going to your very first con, let day one be a non-cosplay day. Just go as yourself,
Definitely,
and
definitely.
just go as yourself and kind of get used to the environment and get used to what's going on. And I did do that in 13, and
Metaphorically dip your toes in just to see what it's like, get a feel for it, kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah, just kind of get used to it and get an idea of what's going on, and that was very helpful to me too.
That's good. Same question for you, Eros. What kind of advice would you want to give for those who are considering on going to a convention or cosplaying the first time, and with autism and everything?
I would say I agree with everybody what they said. I would say bring a friend first, because that means you have someone who could keep you company if you need it, and they know your limit, and if you can't have a friend with you, tell yourself everything's gonna be all right. If your brain doesn't believe that, and it won't, then make sure you know where the nearest quiet room is. They usually have one in the convention center in Emerald City, I believe. And I know SakuraCon has a manga library where I used to go to for decent stuff. Overall, just try to look for resources that help you. Like, I usually study a month before the con, or I pack for the convention because I'm so excited. So I'm very list-based. I'm like Twilight Sparkle when it comes to a list. I'm like, I need to make a list.
Definitely. And also, I'm sure you can all agree, always, like Euro said, always do your research for the con just so you can, map out where everything's at, just in case you need to go somewhere that's quiet. I'm sure you all can agree with that.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I in 2019 I wandered around the building, and I went through the main area, I think 7 times over the first 2 days before it dawned on me that the reason I was getting lost when I left was because there were two doors. So I was going in one and out the other and getting
Oh.
lost.
Oh my.
And so that worked it out. So.
Well, that's good. I mean,
Something else that I do that came to me as everyone else was talking is that not everyone has this, but over time I've developed a mode of just being in my mind where things are going to be chaotic, and that is what I expect. And sometimes I can't prepare enough to know what's going to happen. And so I just expect chaos. And if I expect chaos, then I'm fine when that happens to a certain degree. It's really exhausting to go into that mode, but sometimes it's what I need
oh,
to be
definitely.
able to handle an environment like con.
I mean, to this day, I'm still mentally preparing myself for Komori-con because it's from the photos I've seen over the past few years, and the biggest con I've gone to so far is SAC Anime. But looking at Komori-con and everything, like, yeah, that's gonna take a lot because that's a lot more people and everything and a lot going on. So it's like I feel like I really need to be prepared before going to such a big con such as Komori-con. Um, Real quick, any advice for someone who's never been to such a big con as Komori-con, who has kind of deals with the same thing as you guys do?
I know with some conventions that I've been to, they take place at a hotel, so because he has also autistic, he's been happy they're in hotels because he could just go back to the room and take a nap, and I just do whatever I want to do. Because if something is too far away from the mountain, as he says, or like jokingly to me, he sometimes can get overwhelmed. So the two of us are just like, we're going to a convention hotel. You want to go with me? Okay, that works.
Got you. Same question for AJ. Any kind of anything I should expect from Komori-con going for my first time eventually, hoping this year?
I mean, read up on the events that you want to go to if you can. I know that as one of the volunteers for the ballroom, not everyone knows about the dress code for certain events, and it can be really, really disappointing, especially when you didn't even think to look for something like that. And I have other things to say on that, but I won't. I won't
For another
bring them
time,
up here.
for sure.
Yep. But yeah, please understand that there is going to be chaos, and there are going to be situations that you have never encountered before. And as much as you can, try to embrace that, but also give yourself the leeway that you need when you know that it's going to be hard to accept it.
Got you. Again, thank you. And also, everyone else, thank you for coming on here and I think talking about a subject that I think really definitely needed to be discussed, especially when, COVID is over and everyone's considering on going back to con, either whether it be returning or going to their first con. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for having us. Can I add a couple of things really quick?
Go
on
ahead.
The topic of autistic people, autistic characters in media. I want to give. There were two actors that deserve a shout out, and we didn't get to mention them earlier just because they weren't pertinent to the specific part of the conversation. But Jessica Nicole on Fringe, who's the parallel universe version of her character Astrid Farnsworth, was on the spectrum, and she was absolutely delightful. Which it helped a little bit that she has a sister who is autistic. And I'm trying to remember the name of the fellow on Alphas. Ryan Cartwright played Gary Bell on the TV show Alphas, who is on the spectrum. And he got to do that both as an autistic fella, and also he's English playing an American on an American show. So it was an excellent portrayal, and it has my favorite comeback by an autistic character ever, where a bully calls him retarded, and he said, "I'm not retarded, I'm autistic. You're retarded." The other thing that I wanted to mention is, and hopefully this will somehow get to somebody in charge at one of the big two comics, Marvel and DC, we were talking about honest portrayals of autism. The number of honestly autistic characters in both the companies combined is 0. And that includes supporting cast.
Really?
Black Manta is said to have been autistic and then cured, but if there's a cure to autism, then they weren't. Then that
Do
kind
not.
of spoils it.
I'm sorry, but there is, from what I've seen and heard and read, there is no cure.
It is a different structuring of the brain.
It's not a disease.
Yeah, well, it's a different structuring of the brain. It is all it is. So it's not something that can really be fixed. It can be specific challenges can be treated. So Black Manta, Black Manta was autistic and cured, he wasn't autistic, and that's an offense been done several times. So the only honestly autistic character that they've ever had has been Johnny Dew of Cyforce, and that hasn't been published since the 90s. So please, let's, if you're going to give us, there's been a lot of talk lately about representation and inclusion, and we would like to be a part of that too.
Well, definitely.
Bring back Cyforce. Give somebody in your company a supporting character who is on the spectrum or something. It would
give people like us it would give people, who do, like, especially kids who are younger, it would give them someone to look up to.
Yeah, that's exactly what's been being said about Kamala Khan, about T'Challa, even about every minority character who's being come through, about all the LGBTQ characters, and so let's do the same thing for
definitely
those on the spectrum.
Definitely for a non-related cosplay con talk podcast.
Yeah,
that's something I like. That's something I would like later on like to discuss. Is comic book characters.
I touch on that right now.
I appreciate it. No, thank you.
More in depth later. Yeah.
Oh no, definitely. Again, everyone. Thank you for coming on, and to those out there who are on the spectrum, you are not alone. Just know that, like, there are people out there that you can talk to and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even if you don't have people around you immediately who understand, I promise there are other people who do.
Definitely.
And you can even try and find one of us.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like I said, hopefully this, for those who are listening to this helped. I really want to give a big shout out to AJ McConnell, aka Solstice Cosplay, Bob Greenwade, also known as the One-Eyed Cosplayer, and Iro Senpai.
Woo!
And to you, Wayne. Hey-o.
Certainly.
Thank you
You
again.
didn't think you didn't think I would get to an entire interview with
I was hoping. Again,
an
everyone.
impression somewhere.
Again, everyone. I'm Wayne the Unknown here. Wayne the Unknown here. Thank you for listening, and until next time, thank you for watching.
Bye.
Bye bye.